One family.
Oh, my God.
Possible 45.
Two horrible tragedies. That's pretty dark stuff. At sea and on land.
My father, he is in bed and someone shot him in the head.
Do you remember what you noticed?
First thing I thought is this crime scene is staged.
Linda always felt that she deserved more than what she was getting, because she and my dad were always butting heads.
So we've got no weapons, we've got no enemies that we know of.
And no more details, because she disappears.
I told her not to go on that boat.
So she went out of the way to give them information in case something happened.
Yes, indeed.
It's just getting wilder and wilder.
Because in the middle of the ocean, nobody can hear you scream.
Every fisherman has a story about the one that got away. And this is Nathan Carmen's. The 22-year-old was set to meet up with his mom, Linda, for a late-night fishing trip out here off the coast of Rhode Island. But for Linda, the trip was less about catching bass and more about bonding with her son.
Fishing was one of the things that brought them together, and that was Linda really giving herself to the experience, because Linda hated fishing. Linda didn't eat fish, but she thought this was the only thing that made Nathan happy, and she wanted to connect with her son in any way possible.
That was a common occurrence. They used to go either weekly or sometimes bi-weekly.
Nathan and his mother, they'd taken a boating course. They had some fundamental knowledge, but they stuck pretty close to land and were fishing for stripers and blues.
Nathan's experience was, I would characterize him as a recreational fisherman.
Mom and son planned to cruise toward Block Island in this boat which Nathan recently bought, one that just passed inspection by the Coast Guard a month earlier. That's comforting to Linda, who has a better to be safe than sorry approach when it comes to boating.
So she begins to tell her friends about this fishing trip and shares information as to where they're going to be at specific times during that trip.
Linda is so cautious. She even texts photos of the boat and its registration number to her friends so it could be easily spotted if the boat breaks down.
You're relying on your engine, you're relying on electronics to get you there.
On a starless night with calm seas, the two depart Ram Point Marina in Rhode Island at about 11 p.m. Linda texts her friends that the journey is underway. The boat is never seen or heard from again.
One of my sisters had called me and said Linda and Nathan are missing. And I kind of freaked out.
Linda's friends begin to worry on Sunday of that weekend, because Linda had claimed that she was going to come back and text them when she arrived.
Linda always did a float log. And, you know, when Linda got back, she'd call her friend Sharon, and Sharon never received the phone call.
That's when two of her best friends reach out to authorities and say, something has happened. There are two missing boaters off the coast of Rhode Island. We need your help.
It started out as a typical missing persons investigation, which is not criminal in nature. Our first order of business is naturally to find the missing people, gather the facts and circumstances to try to determine how they potentially went missing. Oftentimes people are not missing, they're just overdue.
The U.S. Coast Guard quickly begins a search over the Atlantic.
The United States Coast Guard really deployed every available resource that they had to find this missing boat. They deployed fixed-wing aircraft, reconnaissance planes, Coast Guard cutters.
Given the nature of the success rate that the Coast Guard has with search and rescue, I was very, very shocked that they were not finding anything.
We defer to the Coast Guard for search and rescue efforts. In that respect, they were really scouring the ocean, and the search efforts came up unsuccessful.
I think it was day 6 that the Coast Guard made a decision to call off any additional search. And at that point, they had covered 64,000 square nautical miles, which is a massive, massive search area.
So the Orient Lucky, which is a Chinese cargo ship, and they were out around 115 miles south of Martha's Vineyard as they were shifting ballast in their ship.
The Orient Lucky routinely travels the high seas picking up cargo, but this time it will make headlines for picking up something else. Lucky indeed.
They saw what they believed was an orange ball popping out of the ocean about 1 square nautical mile from where the cargo ship was positioned at the time. And when they got a little closer, they realized it was a life raft. And inside that life raft was a figure, a young man standing and waving a flag in distress. Getting this large freighter close enough to not kill Nathan Carman, but save Nathan Carman was a challenge. And I think the captain made a certain maneuver that allowed them to get a little closer to Nathan where they could deploy a life ring, and the life ring landed several feet away from where the life raft was. So Nathan then had to jump out of the life raft and swim.
The stunned crew members document the rescue with a series of photos and videos. Once he's on board, Nathan is offered hot soup, water, and dry clothes.
I got a call from my supervisor saying that Nathan had been recovered by a passing ship. I was shocked, and I was thankful that there was a survivor.
The rescue, a kind of needle in a haystack, becomes international news.
And a man lost at sea with his mother for 8 days has been found alive in good condition.
There were pictures of Nathan that were on the front page of newspapers all over the world, because everybody thought that this was a wild story.
Next tonight, here, the family mystery at sea. More than 100 miles from land, the discovery, and authorities asking what happened.
Nathan, this is United States Coast Guard, Boston. Over.
Mom and I, 2 people, myself and my mom, were fishing, and there was a funny noise in the engine compartment. I looked and saw a lot of water. The boat dropped out from under my feet. When I saw the life raft, I did not see my mom. Have you found her?
No, we haven't been able to find her yet.
Nathan Carman is still on that freighter. He's expected to arrive in Boston tomorrow night.
So now we can start to maybe get some insight as to what transpired and why it transpired. But it was also concerning because Linda hadn't been recovered.
Happy to be back on land, but exhausted by his ordeal, Nathan heads home and asks for privacy.
I would just like to thank the public for their prayers and for their concern for both my mother and for myself.
It's not the first time this family has dealt with drama and tragedy.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
This is a nautical map. The area that Nathan departed from is right up here. His transit would have taken him down this body of water here. And that is the point in which one of the individuals traveling inbound observed Nathan and Linda on the boat. And that was the last time that anyone saw the boat.
In the days and weeks after his dramatic sea rescue, Nathan finds himself just as alone on land as he was at sea. And he feels like the media has gotten his story wrong. So he agrees to an interview with ABC News.
Well, it would be great to have people embracing you, saying, we're glad you're home, we're glad you're alive. It hasn't been that.
Loneliness seems to be Nathan's constant companion. He grew up an only child. His parents divorced when he was little. Kids made fun of him at school.
I heard people trying to imitate him or, try to make fun of the way he spoke. And I've definitely seen people mock the way he ran down the hallway.
I got the impression that a lot of people didn't try to talk to him, and maybe that kind of contributed to his loneliness or feeling isolated and uncomfortable being in crowds and with other people.
His best friend in the world was one who wouldn't judge him, a horse named Cruz.
Yes, I was very fortunate in that regard, and I was able to really form a strong bond emotionally.
Cruz and Nathan had a very tight bond. It was definitely his best friend, his confidant. I went to the stable once with Linda and Nathan. We were ready to leave the stable. I said, well, where's Nathan? Go on in and get Nathan. She's like, no, Nathan loves to spend time with Cruz alone before we leave. And he was there for probably a good half hour, if not longer, just spending time with Cruz in his stall.
But when Nathan is 17, that bond shatters. Cruz dies. Devastated, Nathan runs away from his Connecticut home. Nathan doesn't stop running until he reaches Virginia, 600 miles away. That's where a sheriff's deputy finds him.
Running away from home was something that I felt that I had to do at the time. I don't fully understand or comprehend that sitting here now.
A couple of interesting things Nathan had on him on his possession when he was found in Virginia. He had $4,000 in cash. That money had been given to him by his grandfather, but he also had a couple of photos of his horse, Cruz. And he had a Ziploc bag with some of the horse's hair in it.
His parents drive all night to Virginia to bring Nathan home.
Clark Carmen told me that Nathan had fled to a horse farm, or that's where he was supposed to be going, in Florida, because Nathan had told his father that that was a place that he could feel normal.
Nathan is diagnosed with Asperger's, which we now know as autism spectrum disorder. Social interactions and communication skills can be challenging.
I'm not someone who understands relationships or who's good about talking about emotions.
But Nathan does share a close relationship with his grandfather, John Chocolos, a wealthy real estate developer who made his fortune in the nursing home business.
My dad had 5 sisters and 4 daughters, and then he had his first grandchild. That I think Linda was really excited that she had a boy to bring into my dad's life.
And then Nathan comes along, and he's your uncle's first grandchild. He doted on him.
Right.
How excited was he to have a grandson?
I mean, there's not really even words for it. He had such great hopes for that kid.
Tell me about the daughters in the family.
I think they were all different individuals. Elaine was the oldest. The next one down was Linda. She was more like John personality-wise. Charlene is the next one down. Valerie's the youngest. I think she was kind of like the apple of John's eye.
My grandfather was the closest person to me. He was like a father to me, and I know I was like a son to him.
When it comes to business, Nathan, a teenager, has a pretty unusual role at his grandfather's company, one that requires him to look and listen closely.
John Chocolos brought Nathan to all of his business dealings because John Chocolos was hard of hearing, and Nathan was his both eyes and ears at every business meeting. They would consult each other after the business meetings were completed. So I think that, John Chocolos was grooming Nathan to take over the family business.
I got the feeling that John had a very good relationship with him and was trying to cultivate that. Nathan was as introverted as John was extroverted, I think.
What was his relationship like as Nathan is growing up? You said there weren't enough words.
He kind of treated him the same way that he treated me when I was a kid. He couldn't do enough for him. The only problem with it is that John always looked at a problem. If there's a problem, if you throw enough money at it, it's going to solve it.
John Chocolos doted on Nathan, gave him anything he wanted, whether it was a credit card or a new truck or a new apartment. There was nothing that Nathan needed because John was always there with his checkbook or his credit card to give Nathan anything he wanted.
With a support system like his granddad, Nathan's future could be limitless. until one phone call changes everything.
Oh my God! Oh my God! The front door was locked. Oh my God!
Possible 45.
Oh my God! I don't even know what to do. I don't even know where to look.
Windsor, Connecticut, a typical small town. Pretty nice community. You know, not a lot of crime. Murders in Windsor are very rare.
Not rare enough for the man living on Overlook Drive. John Chocolos was a self-made man here in Windsor, Connecticut, running his multi-million-dollar real estate business out of his modest home. That is until the morning of December 20th, 2013. Police arrive here after getting an urgent 911 call.
Okay, what's the emergency?
I came to check on my father to pick him up for an activity. He is in bed and someone shot him in the head.
Is he still alive?
I don't think so. I walked into the bedroom and there's blood all over the back wall.
When I saw the news and my dad being brought out, in a body bag and them saying it was a murder, and I lost it. I lost it. I fell to the floor and I'm crying hysterically.
My name is Scott McGregor. In 2013, I was a detective for the Windsor Police Department. Mr. Chocolos was found in a bedroom on the upper part of the house. In his bed, we found him that he had been shot 3 times.
The scene says a lot to the detective, not for what's in the house, but for what isn't.
You obviously start looking for evidence, and when you can't find spent shell casings, once again, you go back to whoever did this, took the time to retrieve those casings and not leave evidence behind. That kind of tells us that the person planned this out, knew to cover their steps, which ultimately makes our investigation harder.
Sergeant Chris McKee also gets the call to head to Overlook Drive, a quiet street with a quiet resident who wasn't exactly well known around town. How did he fit into the community in terms of how he had accumulated his wealth? Was he kind of like a little local success story?
I gotta say, he ran in his circles and his business circles. He wasn't known in Windsor, and I was very active in community roles in the department, and like I said, I wasn't aware of him until this investigation.
McKee walks into a bloody scene. You're looking around the room. Do you remember what you noticed?
A little further down from Mr. Chocolos' bedroom, there was a glass door, or a door with glass panes that led into the backyard. The officer and I observed that there was broken glass.
A break-in?
Well, it looked like it was meant to be a break-in, but looking at it, it was very clear that the glass had been punched from the wrong side, and it was very suspicious. First thing I thought is this crime scene is staged.
The recently widowed victim was known to keep cash in his house, but after the shots were fired, the gunman left. The money still there. Was there any sense that it had been ransacked or robbed?
There had been large sums of money in the house and other valuables, and honestly, nothing appeared touched. It told me that this was personal.
The devastated family speaks out on local news, hoping to catch a killer.
My father, while he lived a small life, he was a very large man. And to know him, you could never forget him.
Anyone could have done this.
This person killed at least once that we know of. This person's gotten away with murder. And chances are it will happen again.
When we start any murder investigation, we want to do a timeline. We want to start trying to find out who was with John.
My father, my mother passed November 21st.
my father for 2 weeks was staying with one of us, or Linda was staying at my father's house.
Another curious thing about the home, it doesn't exactly look like a millionaire lives there. One of the victim's daughters explains why.
My father has an elaborate estate. I mean, the man's worth at least $40 to $50 million. I mean, it's huge. You wouldn't know it going into the house. That's the only reason why I'm bringing up my father's financial worth. Is because looking at this house, you would not know that he has a 25,000 square foot house up in New Hampshire.
You find out that this is a prominent businessman, a wealthy businessman.
Yep.
What does that say to you initially about this?
Kind of starts to focus investigators in on, was this financially motivated? Did someone have, this gentleman had a lot of money, a lot of properties, did someone have something to gain financially from his death?
The videos of the Windsor police interviewing various family members have never been broadcast before.
Nathan and I went fishing. We went out of Point Judith, Rhode Island.
Okay.
So we went on a cod trip that left at 6 in the morning, got back into port at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
A long day.
We learned that John, the day before, the last person to see him was his grandson, Nathan Carmen. We learned that through talking to Nathan, talking to family.
Hey Nathan, what's your last name? My last name is spelled C-A-R-M-A-N.
We have to treat everyone as a possible suspect. Family, associates, people who worked in the office, neighbors, anything. Anyone could have done this.
Investigators asked Nathan about employees at Chocolos's company, and the grandson mentions one who, he says, complains about being overworked and underpaid.
Just that I'm underpaid, also the stress load. I have 101 things to do. I have to get all these papers in. Now you're asking me to do this and the other thing. So he would bitch and moan about that.
The bookkeeper is, in fact, stealing from the Chocolos's company.
So obviously he's someone we want to talk to.
Nathan begins outlining his final evening with his grandfather to investigators. It begins with dinner. He was going to come here and eat that night with Nathan.
That was the plan, and he wanted me to come too. Yeah. And, I said, look, you guys go do it. If I only knew what I knew, now.
After their meal, Nathan and his grandfather return to the Windsor home. At some point, John Chocolos gets a phone call and puts it on speaker.
I think that there's a real possibility that the person who called him may have been a mistress. I don't like saying that my grandfather was doing that, but I think there's that real possibility.
It wasn't one of your aunts?
No, it was not one of my aunts. It was not one of my aunts, no one in the family. Very young, like 20, 30. And he then told that female voice to just wait. Hold on a second. He showed me to the door.
Nathan Carmen is correct. There is a young woman Chocolos has been talking to.
And she became a suspect. Did you go anywhere else that night or anything like that? Or did you just stay home?
No, I didn't sleep because I was where I had to be at. I was supposed to be at meet my mom at 3 o'clock. When I fall asleep, I have difficulty waking up. So I tried to stay awake. I did run out to Stop and Shop, and I got some ice cream for myself. I picked up a few AAA batteries because I was out of them, and then I headed home. Then I stayed until I went back out to meet my mom.
Investigators don't have much to go on, with the exception of some security camera footage, which they used to retrace the last days of John Chocolos's life. Like this casino video, where the 87-year-old is seen with a much younger woman. Will it provide investigators with answers? The Windsor Police Department may not know who killed John Chocolos yet, but they are beginning to understand who did not. Remember the woman Nathan heard on the phone? And the woman at the casino? They are one and the same.
So John Chocolos struck up a relationship with a 25-year-old woman. over the course of a year.
She was an acquaintance of John who was going to the casino, staying overnight. The night of the homicide, she confirmed that she had talked to John, but she was kind of quickly dismissed as being involved.
Investigators have also tracked down that bookkeeper Nathan mentioned. His name is William Sati, and he too is cleared.
He had an alibi that night and was confirmed. I think he was actually out of the state at the time. I think we found him in Rhode Island.
While cleared as a suspect in the murder, Sati was later convicted of stealing some $400,000 from Chocolus' company.
But that's small change compared to the money the patriarch was handing over to family members every year.
One of the problem children was Linda. Linda was taking John's allowances and going off on spending sprees at casinos or going skiing or taking these lavish trips around the world.
Linda always felt that she deserved more than what she was getting. I don't know why she felt that way. I don't know, because she and my dad were always butting heads.
Father and daughter also butt heads over the way Nathan is being raised.
The relationship between John and Linda was always volatile, but one day it turned violent. And that was over Nathan's care. Nathan was put into a psychiatric hospital shortly after his horse, Cruz, had died. And the accusations begin to fly. Linda accuses John of smothering her son with all sorts of riches, and John is yelling at Linda, saying that she is a bad mother and that Nathan is normal and that Nathan should be treated as such. And at one point, John reaches across the table and grabs Linda by the hair and starts to pull it. So Linda swings and she starts to fight back at her father. And it's a combustible moment that probably lasted a minute plus. And they're swinging at each other, they're fighting each other, and the orderlies are summoned as well as the local police, and Linda is arrested right on the spot.
Linda chalks it up as two people cut from the same cloth.
I don't back down from my father. Yeah.
And that's just his personality not to back down.
Yeah,
Sure.
and it's not his personality to back down either. So if anyone would have fought with him, you know, it would have been me.
Linda has spent many more years fighting to protect her son from those who might treat him unkindly.
I know he led a very lonely life. It's at the age where kids were being invited to birthday parties and, having play dates. And nobody was calling for Nathan to go to the birthday party. And, it was sad. And she hated that for her child. Any mother would hate it if her child wasn't included in anything. But yeah, it must have been hard for Linda not being able to fix that. Linda was a fixer. Linda had to fix things, or at least try to fix things, and she just could not fix that.
Linda and Nathan had a very unique and conflicted relationship. Nathan saw his mother as somebody who was incredibly domineering, and Linda was always trying to get him the therapy that she thought he needed. And I think Nathan wanted to get as far away from his mother as possible because Nathan didn't want to feel different from anybody else.
And with his grandfather, Nathan feels like a success. He learns about business, he's a confidant to John Chocolos, his college tuition is paid for, and so is the rent on his apartment and his credit card bills. Linda couldn't compete with that.
I think what it comes down to is Nathan's always felt torn between me and my father.
Picking sides.
Like he had to pick a side.
How's your relationship in general to your mother?
I did move out of her house, and when we were not on good terms, but I since started speaking to her again. Probably about a year ago.
Did that concern you at all in terms of looking at him as a suspect, that maybe he might exhibit behavior that you wouldn't normally see, but he does have a disorder?
That was a concern of many of us, are the behaviors we're seeing, are the answers he's giving in that one interview that he did grant, are these more aligned with behaviors perhaps of someone who is on the autism spectrum? Or can we look at these for what we normally would kind of think This is kind of sketchy, a little suspicious. We want to delve more into this.
Was your grandpa involved during that time?
Yes, my grandpa. He facilitated financially my ability to go off on.
So for Linda, the recent fishing trips are a way of pulling her son back into her life. But now there's the murder of her father to deal with and lots of money at stake. Everybody is under the microscope.
Do you own any weapons?
No.
Anybody else in the family own any weapons?
No.
Anybody have access to any weapons? Anybody that knows anybody that has weapons? Nothing at all. Okay. So we've got no weapons, we've got no enemies we know of.
That we know of.
Do you own any firearms?
I do have an air gun. Okay. I'm not sure if that counts as a firearm, but
is it the only?
Yes, it is.
But after speaking with a long line of friends, family, and business associates, investigators are about to realize they've been lied to. In the wake of 87-year-old John Chocolos's brutal murder, investigators have few leads, with one notable exception: fragments of the bullets fired at the victim. There's hope that they could be traced back to a possible murder weapon. What kind of weapon was used to kill him?
It was believed to be a rifle because it was a .308 cartridge, a certain type of bullet.
And a ballistics test concludes the gun used was most likely a Sig Sauer rifle, like this one.
But in the wake of the Newtown massacre, these types of weapons were illegal to own in Connecticut, where Chocolos was murdered.
The detectives focused a lot of their attention on New Hampshire. They scoured gun dealers, I think well over 600 gun dealers, looking for that Sig Sauer rifle.
Eventually, investigators make their way to a place called Shooter's Outpost and speak with salesman Jed Warner about recent purchases. He remembers an interaction with a customer just weeks earlier.
He definitely stood out because he looked like he came off like a construction site. His pants were dirty. He was wearing like a pair of like dirty boots, like a construction feel about him. We started talking about rifles and targeting. He said, actually, I'm very interested in the Sig Sauer 716.
It's an expensive rifle, retailing for almost $2,000. Jed says he suggested other options that were more economical for target shooting, but the buyer knows what he wants.
We do all the paperwork, do the background, he passes. He just kind of walked straight out, and that was the last we saw of him. 2 officers from the Windsor area were there, and then a local, like a Connecticut ATF agent. We had to like go through all the stuff, try to figure out the day of sale.
And there they find it, a bill of sale for a Sig Sauer rifle. The name of the purchaser, Nathan Carmen.
And that became an incredible aha moment for investigators and potentially the smoking gun in this case.
After the discovery at Shooter's Outpost, Nathan is asked again about owning any guns.
And since, because I just wasn't feeling safe at home, I did buy a shotgun.
You did buy a shotgun?
That's correct.
Any other purchases of a firearm anytime?
No.
And that wasn't ever volunteered or brought up until investigators found this out-of-state bill of sale and then confronted Nathan with it.
And how did he respond?
Well, he acknowledged that he had bought this weapon. When asked about it, he said he lost it. And he didn't know where the gun was.
That had to be really a red flag for you all.
It was.
Most people don't lose those firearms or any firearm. But yeah, you don't normally hear, I don't know where it is.
And there was no report of him, making a report that it was stolen, lost, etc.
So what are you thinking at this point? You've been kind of connecting these dots.
Well, it gets better. There was at least 1 hour of unaccounted time during which Mr. Chocolos was shot that Nathan couldn't account for his time.
Linda arrives at this Home Depot parking lot at 3 a.m., where she and Nathan are set to meet up to go fishing. But Nathan is nowhere to be found.
You left your house on about 3.
And we know you got to Glastonbury based on your own words. I know about 4. Why would it take an hour to travel, and I'm guessing 20-something miles at the rate of 65 miles an hour? It's just mathematically not possible.
On or around 3. About 3.
So
perhaps after.
But this security footage taken outside Nathan's apartment complex shows him leaving at 2:57 a.m. Linda tries calling her son 3 times, but his phone appears to be turned off. He finally calls her back at 4:01 a.m. Did you think you were closing in on an arrest?
I thought so. Yes.
I have to ask you straight up, were you involved in your grandfather's death? Did you?
Absolutely not. No.
But that potential smoking gun, the Sig Sauer rifle, is still missing. Despite a months-long extensive search of Nathan's apartment, the Chocolate estate, and surrounding areas for that crucial piece of evidence, it's nowhere to be found.
And I think that's exactly what they were pinning their entire case on, was that murder weapon. Had they found it and connected it to Nathan, then Nathan would have been in handcuffs.
And so law enforcement was directed to keep working to try to build the case.
This had to be frustrating.
It just tears at you because, you know, you think you've got it. The family had put up a huge billboard on Interstate 91, you know, and coming and going to work every day, I would see that. I would see Mr. Chocolos's face. I would see, you know, reward money for information.
Even though Nathan is under a cloud of suspicion, he's still a free man, but feels like he's an outcast in his own community now. So he takes a portion of his inheritance that had been given to him by his grandfather, and he leaves the state. He travels to Vermont, and he buys an historic farmhouse, and he also bought a boat.
Nathan buys a 31-foot fishing boat, formerly called the Chicken Pox. He plans another fishing outing with his mom, Linda, who has stood by him throughout all the accusations.
And Linda is very excited about that opportunity, but also very concerned because she knows that her son is not an experienced fisherman or an experienced boater.
Linda tells friends that the plan was to fish off the coast of Block Island and head back the next morning.
She was so concerned that she had a text message conversation with people ashore, and that's a smart thing to do, to let people know what your plans are.
So she went out of the way to give them information in case something happened.
Yes, indeed.
When Linda fails to check in, her friends start to worry.
2 of her best friends reach out to authorities and say, something has happened, we need your help.
At first, we were like, okay, hopefully it's just they're overdue and they're going to come back to shore.
But after several days elapse, authorities search Nathan's home and vehicle and find some alarming items.
We start thinking that he may have intent to either harm himself and his mother or both of them.
How did you get word that something had gone wrong with that?
My cousin Charlene called me and told me that they were missing. And I said, I told her not to go on that boat.
Here is Nathan in a 31-foot aluminum boat with his mother, who's got no experience boating, and he thinks that he's the master fisherman or the master boater. Or does he think this is the perfect place to kill his mother? Because in the middle of the ocean, nobody can hear you scream.
But what really happened on that boat? Nathan Carmen answers tough questions under oath.
How often did you lie to the Windsor Police Department?
There was one inaccurate.
Staring out at that open water, probably wondering what happened to my mother, or thinking, did I just get away with murder?
His mother is still missing and feared dead.
And the question becomes, what happened? Everybody wants to know what happened.
I didn't know if she had been dragged down with the ship Neither of us had been wearing life vests.
The media coverage was huge.
I'm just asking you to defend yourself against these people who are saying that you did something to your boat that would make it sink.
Yeah, we're done for this evening, period.
He was shooting himself in the foot on national TV.
It is absolutely unfair for the police to use the tragedy that happened to my mother and I as an opportunity to try to nail me for a murder that I didn't commit.
Nathan's grandfather, John Chocolass, had been shot to death 3 years prior to the disappearance of Linda Carmen. And once those connections were made, the story amplified.
You were convinced that Nathan had killed his grandfather.
Correct.
And now you're convinced that he killed his own mother?
It's a story about greed and heartless brutality.
Mr. Chocolass was found in a bedroom on the upper part of the house, in his bed, shot several times in the head. We have to treat everyone as a possible suspect. Anyone could have done this.
But my sisters had told me they suspected Nathan. And that just totally blew me out of the water.
The daughters of John Chocolass got very angry that there was really nothing happening with the case. They couldn't find the murder weapon. They hadn't arrested Nathan Carmen.
And it's just getting wilder and wilder.
Could a family be this burdened to have a second catastrophic event? I didn't know. This is slowly starting to move from a missing persons case to something other than a missing persons case.
It's been 3 years since John Chocolass's murder, with no charges ever filed. Now, the family is facing yet another tragedy as Chocolass's grandson, Nathan Carmen's boat sinks on a fishing trip, with Nathan's mom, Linda, missing and presumed drowned. We're going to head out on a ride on the open water to get a better idea of what happened out here. I met up with Dave Farrell, a maritime lawyer for Nathan's boat insurers. So let's pick up with when the Coast Guard gets involved in this.
They had a lot of vessels out here. They had a lot of aerial searches, and they were really crisscrossing an area that eventually was 64,000 square miles.
That's a big coverage area.
Yeah, the state of Georgia.
And then 2 days later, there's a big shock.
The Orient Lucky finds a life raft 106 miles south of Martha's Vineyard, and in it is Nathan Carmen alone.
With his crew already snapping pictures and recording video, the ship's captain is alerted to a life raft in the water.
After spotting Nathan Carmen and his life raft at sea, I sounded the alarm for our crew to prepare for the rescue efforts, and we were ready to rescue him.
They threw him a life ring, and he grabbed it with his hands. He got dragged up toward the hull of the ship. He was able to push off the side of the ship with his outstretched hand, and he was able to climb up the gangway.
He got onto the ladder. We pulled the ladder up on board.
When Nathan gets aboard the Orient Lucky, the kid looked like Aquaman. There was no physical distress in his well-being. He wasn't dehydrated. He was not hypothermic.
The captain of the Orient Lucky doesn't see anything wrong with him. This is astounding.
I got the call from my supervisor that he'd been located and recovered. I was shocked, and I was thankful. I was happy that there was a survivor, but it was also concerning because Linda hadn't been recovered.
When I found out that, Linda was lost at sea and, I knew she wasn't coming back, it was just, I just had flashbacks of us growing up and just, the good times that we did have. And then, of course, the guilt and the regret that I had of how I treated her in the end. You just don't think that you're going to lose somebody so suddenly like that.
We receive a call from the Coast Guard that Nathan was picked up by a merchant vessel in the shipping lanes in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. First thing you say is, okay, where's Linda? Linda's not with him, just Nathan.
Back on land, with his lawyer present, Nathan's interviewed by Alfred Bucco, an investigator with the South Kingston, Rhode Island Police Department. This audio's never been broadcast before.
I just went in there and said, Nathan, tell me what happened.
We went out to Block Canyon. It was light, but the sun wasn't over the horizon yet. And we started trolling. Okay. And I heard strange noise coming from the engine compartment. So I opened up the hatch in front of the pilot house, and I saw that there was a lot of water in the bilge.
He went and shut down the engine and moved aft to where his mother was.
He said he told his mom to reel in the lines. How did he describe what was happening with the commotion?
He said to his mother only one thing during this calamity, and it was reel in the lines. And she said only one thing in return, okay, I will. At that point, he went up into the wheelhouse, and he says that he started moving emergency gear up to the bow. He wasn't quite ready to abandon ship, but he wanted to be ready.
I didn't realize we were sinking.
Okay.
I knew there was water in the bilge. I knew there was a lot of water because it was already up to that level. Just why I wanted to bring the safety stuff as a precaution. Okay. But I thought I was going to find the problem and fix it.
The third time that he's been in the wheelhouse and failed to radio, he's walking forward to the bow, and all of a sudden, in a split second, the boat sinks.
Boats don't sink that fast.
No. And it sank quickly, like immediately it was out of sight. And that's how he says he never saw his mother again.
He calls for his mother throughout the rest of the day. And he said upon nightfall, he gave up trying to search for her, and he went to sleep and then drifted through the Atlantic Ocean until he was located. So let's get back to your mother. You talk to her, all the time. You go out fishing twice a week. How would you describe, your relationship with her? Is it good?
I don't see the relevance to this particular incident here.
Yeah, I concur.
I think this interview's over. Thank you, though.
After the interview is over, from our perspective, we're like, okay, this isn't just a missing persons investigation. We may be dealing with maybe a homicide.
Captain Hengdong observed Nathan walking the deck of the Orient Lucky for hours at a time by himself, staring out at that open water, probably wondering what happened to my mother, or thinking, did I just get away with murder?
And soon, the whole world will hear from Nathan Carman in his own words.
She'd always been kind of reluctant about safety. I guess she had good reason to be.
New developments in that mystery at sea. Rescued after 8 days in a life raft, searchers had given up.
Nathan Carman and his mother went fishing last week. He survived the ordeal, but his mother didn't make it.
Now authorities are trying to figure out what happened.
The media coverage was huge. This was a story that made headlines around the country.
Initially, Nathan avoids the media, but eventually agrees to an interview with then ABC News correspondent Lindsay Janis in 2017. At his suggestion, they meet at a park near his home.
So take me through that evening. You met at the marina in Rhode Island, and then what?
We met at the marina in Rhode Island, and we had bait, which we got on board. And as we were heading out into the harbor, I had asked her a couple times in the past, will you go to the canyons with me? And she'd always been kind of reluctant about safety, and I guess she had good reason to be.
While Nathan and Linda were still missing and the Coast Guard scouring the Atlantic, investigators back on land began searching through their vehicles here at this marina, looking for clues that might help in the search.
It looked like he had been somewhat almost living out of his truck or sleeping in his truck. We found some receipts from different marine stores.
Items purchased at area marinas in the hours before the fateful voyage included a rock-type anchor that would never have worked for Nathan's boat. And then some lengths of chain. They were curious purchases.
But there was also a bucket of eels that was in Nathan's truck. That stood out to me because eels are often used as bait when fishing for striped bass. And if you left the dock and didn't take your bait, what are you using for bait if you're going fishing?
Nathan tells us the same story he told police, that his mom had been concerned about safety ahead of the boat trip.
And I want to stress that it wasn't an argument, because I want to stress that it was not an argument. She had always been kind of skittish. We're stopping right here with that question.
Oh, okay. But why not reach out for help? The Coast Guard said there was no Mayday call.
I had a radio, and there was also an EPIRB, which is an emergency position indicating radio beacon, on the boat, like someone needs to be medevaced, or when you know you're sinking. But I didn't know that we were sinking until we sank.
Nathan said that there was a lot of commotion going on and the water was being taken on in here. So where would his mom have been when all of this is happening?
Right where you are.
So she would have been right back in this area?
Yes.
But they're not speaking? I mean, and she doesn't know that they're going down?
Nathan has excellent line of sight on her the whole time, and yet he says he never saw her afterwards.
At that point, I didn't know if she had been dragged down with the ship, because neither of us had been wearing life vests. I assumed that if she had been on the surface, that she would have been calling out to me and I would have been able to find her.
According to Nathan, days go by and he huddles on the life raft, keeping a lookout for rescuers.
I was looking out at the horizon for other ships or for helicopters when conditions were good. When the waves were high, because they got to like 13 feet and they were breaking waves at a few points, a few days.
It must have been terrifying.
Yes.
But to some, Nathan's claim of drifting for over a week in rough seas before being rescued defies belief.
The initial videos showing this guy walking up the gangway of the ship without any great problem. He seemed to be just fine.
You would be in dire straits after, 5 or 6 days.
If you laid on that couch for 8 days and you got up to go to the bathroom, your legs would be wobbly because you haven't used them.
At the same time that Nathan and Linda's vehicles were searched at the docks, police in Vermont were conducting a search of Nathan's house, which was under construction.
The investigators find, modems, SIM cards, a few other things. The one thing they don't find is a computer. Whatever computer he was using to conduct his online purchases has disappeared.
Another item that was seized during the search was a lengthy letter that Nathan had written to an unknown priest that described his relationship and his view of his mother.
My mother's bullying, calling me a quitter, a stuck-up snob who thinks he is a king, and a piece of basically characterized my childhood. One night, though, I went to bed imagining myself as essentially a master of my own hell, joying in inflicting grave bodily suffering on other people. So, yeah.
After his interview with Alfred Bucco, Nathan has all but stopped talking to the police and is never questioned about the letter or his missing computer. Reporter Lindsay Janis is one of the few people he is willing to talk to.
I know I wasn't responsible for anything that resulted from the boat sinking. I know I wasn't responsible for my mom's death.
You were convinced that Nathan had killed his grandfather.
Correct.
And now you're convinced that he killed his own mother?
Yes.
That's pretty dark stuff. If the interview hadn't already made Nathan's story seem a little fishy, the follow-up was even more eye-opening.
I did not cause my mother's death. We're done here this evening.
If you have nothing to hide, there shouldn't be a problem answering the questions.
Oh, hi, Dave. Nice to meet you. Hi, how are you?
I'm Matt. Nice
hi,
to meet you.
Matt, nice to meet you, Matt. Thanks so much for taking us out. Initially, when everybody else was scratching their heads and wondering, wow, this poor guy, what happened to his mom? For the average person out there who's looking at this and taking it at face value, folks who know the water, like you do, had your doubts.
Absolutely. People had doubts about this story from the beginning.
With Linda Carmen presumed lost at sea, her reportedly tumultuous relationship with her son Nathan was under renewed scrutiny. He sits down with 2020 for a second interview, which now holds new significance.
If someone said that you did not get along with your mother, that you did not like her, is there any truth to that at all?
No, there's not any truth to that. Our relationship had grown from where it had been. We did have a challenging relationship at one point in my life, but she was the closest person in the world to me after my grandfather passed.
Will you inherit all of what your mother had?
That's something that I can't comment on at this time.
But unbeknownst to Nathan, his mom has decided not to leave him any inheritance. She even records a video message obtained exclusively by 2020 explaining that he won't be getting her house.
Hey, big guy, I guess if you're watching this, you're watching this. I want to explain why I did what I did and why my will is stated the way it is. I feel that when you moved out, you took everything that was of value to you and everything you wanted. That's my feeling.
And in her written last will and testament, dated 3 years before she disappeared, Linda explicitly excludes Nathan as a beneficiary.
By now, more details of John Chocolos's death and the subsequent investigation have risen to the surface.
Initially, the media was unaware that Nathan's grandfather, John Chocolos, had been shot to death in his bed 3 years prior to the disappearance of Linda Carmen. And once those connections were made, the story amplified. It wasn't a bittersweet rescue story anymore. It was something potentially much more devious.
So, at what point in your life would you say that you became really close with your grandfather?
Here's where I have a bit of an issue. My understanding was we were going to be sitting down and we were going to be talking about
yeah, the raft is my next bit, but we did explain that we need to hear about your whole life leading up to this incident. How can people know who Nathan is if we don't tell them? What was your relationship like with your grandfather?
I'm not talking about my relationship with my grandfather or with if you want to ask me any more questions on Dateline, we're done here.
Can you tell me more about what your grandfather did? He was a big figure in this part of the country.
That's not what this interview is about.
He gets really defensive if people pry a little bit too much. And the way that he shut her off on so many questions and wouldn't cooperate, he was shooting himself in the foot on national TV.
Since we spoke a week ago, there's been a lot of speculation. People are suspicious of you. What do you want to say to those people who are saying something about his story that just isn't adding up?
I'm not aware that those people exist.
There are suspicions about the boat trip. Since we last got together a week ago,
I've said the way it happened.
I'm just asking you to defend yourself against these people who are saying that you did something to your boat that would make it sink.
That's not true.
Nathan had never been interviewed at length by a network or by a reporter, so this was something new to Nathan, and I think Nathan thought it was going to go one way when it certainly went another way.
Was there an issue with the boat that needed to be fixed?
No, there were. We're done.
Nathan, I'm trying to give you an opportunity to speak out against these allegations that have been made.
The only way that I can speak out against them is to say what actually happened, and that's what I've been trying to do.
Another thing that's happened since we last got together, police searched your mom's home.
Yeah,
did you know anything about that?
We're done for this evening, period. We're done here.
We're not trying to make you uncomfortable. We're trying to give you an opportunity to answer some of these allegations.
We're done here this evening.
If you have nothing to hide, there shouldn't be a problem answering the questions.
He walked out. He walked out of the interview, only to come back.
Police never arrested you for the murder of your grandfather. Do you think it is unfair that people are bringing that up and talking about that now?
It is absolutely unfair for the police to use the tragedy that happened to my mother and I as an opportunity to try to nail me for a murder that I didn't commit.
Can you understand when people see that you were the last person to see two people alive? They see that and they say you are either the most unlucky man alive or you had something to do with those two deaths. What do you say to that?
I say that there's no relationship.
Later that month, Nathan holds a memorial service for his mom. It's sparsely attended by some of her friends. Linda's sisters are notably absent.
Now, Linda hasn't even been declared dead yet. Nobody in his family is willing to go because many of us in his family believe that Nathan is truly the culprit.
I'm very grateful to the friends and family who attended in memory of my mom.
Nathan, you've been through so much. How have you been these last several weeks?
It's been very difficult.
We had no boat. We had no body. But as in any investigation, there's always evidence that can be recovered. It's just a matter of making sure that you know where to look.
There's all hands on deck at that point to try to uncover the truth.
As with the death of John Chocolos, according to investigators, there isn't enough evidence to charge Nathan with a crime. But in a twist of fate, a seemingly innocuous insurance claim for the sunken boat is about to take the saga of Nathan Carman in an unexpected direction.
Some of these strange occurrences maybe could be chalked up to an inexperienced fisherman, a guy who's panicking.
You know, I spent a lot of time with Nathan. I think he was cold, calculating, and had this whole story planned out to explain the disappearance of his mother and the sinking of the vessel.
The idea that he drifted for a week in that life raft just didn't hold water for you?
Not even for a second.
The Nathan Carman case was incredibly explosive. A young man is plucked out of the ocean. That just conjures up all of these images of, say, Tom Hanks in Castaway.
Author Casey Sherman has spent the last 2.5 years researching the case for his new book, Blood in the Water.
The story is so complex and it has so many layers to it. Not only do you have one potential murder, but it's the story about a family and how wealth can corrupt.
As investigators continue digging into Nathan Carman's story of being lost at sea, he takes action, filing an insurance claim for $85,000 to recoup the loss of his boat, the chickenpox.
It happened very promptly, and that indicated to me that this guy's really serious.
The insurance company is not going to pay Nathan. In fact, they are going to take Nathan to court. Nathan also didn't back down.
We filed our suit to deny insurance coverage. We were in for a fight. We came away with the distinct impression that almost everything he said to us was a lie. There were holes in every aspect of his story.
Holes in his story and his boat. Here at this marina where Nathan's odyssey began, fellow boaters noticed odd behavior in him the day before that fateful trip.
It kind of caught my eye when I saw him leaning over the back and drilling 2 holes in the transom of the boat. I asked him, "What are you doing?" That's why he told me, he says, He's taking the trim tabs off.
Trim tabs are stabilization devices that help lift the boat up higher on the water. Nathan admits to removing them, leaving holes in his boat, but says he patched them up with a marine putty.
I patched the holes. They seemed to be well patched. And at the time my mom and I went out, I felt that one, I knew those holes were above the water line, and two, I felt that they were securely patched.
The idea that he was patching up those holes, that putty, the patching didn't work?
It wouldn't work. My theory is that he was trying to make it look like he was deliberately altering the boat in a dangerous fashion.
So that maybe it looked like he made a mistake.
He's very calculating. He wanted people to be able to point to, oh, no wonder the boat sank.
Attorney Dave Farrell represented Nathan's boat insurance companies and has looked into Nathan's account of what happened for years. Nathan's story is that his boat started taking on water, but he failed to put out a distress call because he didn't think the boat was sinking. One would think then maybe he would call out for help, the Mayday situation, right? Did he do that?
No, and he had ample opportunity, because each of the times that he went into the wheelhouse to carry gear forward, he was within arm's length of the microphone for his VHF radio, and a good one.
This is where the emergency equipment is, right? Here?
Yeah, right here. A microphone within arm's reach. And he came in here 3 times to get survival gear and bring it up to the bow. So he was within arm's length 3 times he could have picked it up.
All of these things sound pretty odd. Maybe you can chalk them up to panic and inexperienced fishermen, but you would have to have hard evidence to really show that he wasn't where he should have been.
I got an oceanographer to assess whether it was possible for him to drift in a life raft to where the Orient Lucky picked him up 7 days later.
And was it?
Absolutely impossible. Physically impossible.
I looked at drifting buoys, I looked at historical data, I looked at thermal images of the Gulf Stream rings. All of these different systems showed the currents going westward, and Nathan claimed he drifted eastward. And that did not make any sense.
And Nathan's aunts aren't buying his alleged fish tales either.
New twist in a story making national headlines involving Nathan Carmen.
They file what is known as a Slayer petition, which prevents a person from inheriting property from someone they murdered.
Nathan Carmen's aunts do not want him to inherit that money, and they say essentially profit off of 2 deaths they believe he caused.
When Nathan walks into court, he's actually got a suit, and he's cleaned up, he's shaven.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Nathan Carmen appearing on my own behalf.
He looks like a young, aspiring law student.
The loss of my mom has been extremely difficult for me, so I can sympathize with petitioners in that respect.
He ended up taking depositions. He ended up going into court and arguing motions.
I'll say that some of the petitioners had awfully substantial motive. And I had very, very little.
He ended up putting up his own defense.
You saw him sort of tell the truth the whole time.
But in this deposition obtained by 2020, it's Nathan in the hot seat.
This is the deposition of Nathan Carmen.
Did you have a close relationship with your mother, Linda Carmen?
I would say that I did, yes.
When asked to respond to claims that he lied to police during their interviews with him in 2013, Nathan clams up.
How often did you lie to the Windsor Police Department?
There was one inaccurate. I'm pleading the 5th.
Pleading the 5th as to lying to the Windsor Police Department after your grandfather is dead.
That's
what
correct?
he said. Okay.
Nathan pleads the 5th 81 times during this deposition.
I plead the 5th. I plead the 5th. I plead the 5th. And I plead the 5th.
Meaning he declines to answer questions to avoid potentially incriminating himself.
I plead the 5th.
That's damaging to Nathan, I think, in the public's mind. Who takes the 5th? You know, mobsters take the 5th. Gang lords take the 5th. Not somebody that's completely innocent.
Nathan Carmen caught a legal break today after a judge tossed out the lawsuit his aunts had filed to keep him from collecting millions of dollars from his grandfather's estate.
The judge dismisses the case after he rules John Chocolos wasn't a resident of New Hampshire.
The newspapers reported it as a tremendous win for Nathan. I wasn't too troubled by it.
Nathan is off the hook for his family lawsuit, but his insurance case is looming, and investigators have him in their sight.
Pieces of the puzzle had started to come together.
There were too many inconsistencies.
There's no such thing as a perfect crime.
Nathan Carmen and his insurer head to court in Providence, Rhode Island, battling it out in what would be Nathan's biggest legal challenge yet.
Was Nathan at fault for the sinking of his boat, or was he owed a payday?
Nathan Carmen and his lawyer saying absolutely nothing, heading into Providence federal court this morning for the first day of the civil trial against Carmen.
He's got everything to lose here. If the court determines that he is negligent in his mother's death, that can open up the potential for criminal charges. Nathan at times was very agitated during the trial, but he was also very active, always leaning over and having conversations with his attorney. And he was right in the thick of things.
He takes the stand, sticking to his story of what happened on that boat. What was he like on the stand?
He is very articulate when he wants to be, very exacting, but also very evasive.
Nathan had no emotion when he testified. That may be because he is on the autism spectrum. And he talked about his mother in a way that she was more of a nuisance than she was a help to him while that boat was going down.
The judge asked him, "What's going on with your mother during all this time?" And Nathan's peculiar answer was, "My mother was part of the problem rather than the solution to a sinking boat."
With the case now in the judge's hands, Nathan talks to the media outside the courthouse.
This isn't about money. It's an $85,000 claim. I almost feel like I have a responsibility to my mom to make sure that the truth comes out.
At the end of the trial, the judge rules that Nathan was negligent with regard to the sinking of the chicken pox.
That was a small victory for me because at least a little bit of justice was prevailing through it all.
The civil case acted as the de facto criminal case. FBI investigators, Coast Guard investigators, attorneys, prosecutors, they all had front row seats.
Now it transitioned to his house in Vermont.
Pieces of the puzzle had started to come together and had started to paint a picture for us that this was in fact a criminal act.
There were too many inconsistencies. There were too many things that just didn't add up.
It became very, very clear that Nathan had committed a crime on the high seas.
We don't have a body, we don't have a boat, so it's a very, very difficult case to try to prove. The grand jurors have to decide, is there enough evidence to proceed and indict?
It took several years, but Nathan Carmen is now charged with killing his mother.
Nathan agrees to meet with investigators, but has no clue what's about to happen.
Nathan was surprised when he was advised that he was under arrest for the murder of Linda Carmen.
It was like something out of the golden age of piracy. Nathan was charged with murder on the high seas.
According to an indictment, Carmen devised a scheme to defraud his grandfather's estate and to obtain money from the trust, and the murders were part of this scheme.
However, the indictment doesn't charge Nathan with the murder of John Chocolos.
Medical records, school records.
Nathan hires defense attorney Marty Manella.
Marty Manella is a long-time, very bulldogged litigator. And when he met Nathan, he not only found a client, but he found a son.
He had literally no support. That was probably the hardest thing that Nathan had to endure, the fact that he had no one. But he had us. He really had us. And I had never in 50 years of practicing law had that kind of relationship with a client. Never.
As he's escorted into federal court for arraignment, cameras catch Nathan defiantly proclaiming his innocence.
Not guilty.
Before pleading not guilty to the court as well.
During Nathan's detention hearing, his aunts read a letter to the judge saying that if you let him go, they would be in fear for their life.
I was very relieved that Nathan was going to be put behind bars. If Nathan was not arrested and not contained, I really think he would have gone on a murder spree.
For years, Nathan had lived in solitude in Vermont. He had never threatened anyone. So to me, it was unusual that they were in fear of what?
The court sides with his aunts and denies Nathan's bail, setting a trial date for October 2nd, 2023. Marty and his team get to work.
It was a huge undertaking, and it was a daily, 7-day-a-week thing. It really became part of our lives.
Nathan was incredibly active in his defense. Every waking hour when he wasn't in his jail cell, he was at the prison library, poring over legal books.
This case was his whole life. He wanted his day in court. He wanted to clear his name.
The day of June 15th, 2023, came as a shock. They were just a few months away from trial.
We've learned Nathan Carmen has died while awaiting a trial for his mother's death.
I got a call in the morning. Nathan was gone, and he hung himself. And I just cried.
Nathan took his own life. He wasn't depressed. He wasn't despondent. We were all looking forward to that October date so that we could have this trial.
Despite all the family court battles and accusations, Nathan's aunts come to pay their respects at his funeral.
I attended Nathan's funeral. Myself and my sisters were there. I was very sad.
Nathan's attorney paid for the funeral, paid for his cremation, and then gave his eulogy.
Non-violent and loving young man. Sleep with the angels, my dear friend. It was probably the toughest thing I ever did because it was like losing a family member. It may sound crazy. You lose cases, you lose clients, but you don't have that kind of contact that we had with this person.
I think he is both a victim and a villain in his own story. Nathan Carmen remains an enigma.
The criminal charges against Nathan were dismissed. So in the eyes of the law, Nathan is an innocent man still today.
Months after Nathan Carmen's funeral, a Connecticut judge officially declares his mom, Linda, deceased 7 years after she disappeared at sea. The Windsor Police Department tells 2020 that John Chocolos's murder case is still active.
What I'd like people to remember about my dad, he was kind, he was loving. He'd give you a hard time, but he always did it out of love. Linda was so kind and generous to her friends and the people around her. And I remember all the good times that Linda and I had.
What do you want people to know and remember about your Uncle John?
He's a guy that did it himself. I mean, I loved that guy, you know, and he loved me.
How much do you miss him all these years later?
Every day. Yep. We went to the cemetery today. Nathan's got a stone there, next to my uncle. Why is he buried there? There's no stone there for my cousin Linda. Where's her stone?
Nathan should be remembered as a troubled soul. I'm happy, I'm relieved that Nathan was buried in the family plot next to my dad. Nathan, the child, belongs where he is. He needs to rest.
That's our program for tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Deborah Roberts.
And I'm David Muir from all of us here at 2020 and ABC News. Good night.
I killed my daughter. I killed my daughter. I beat her up too much.
Police, hello?
I've never seen such horrific suffering of a young person.
A murder investigation into the death of a 10-year-old girl.
Very caring, very confident little girl. I don't think I've ever felt such sadness.
The injuries to her body were over 70 in number.
3 people left the country.
It's a family on the run without the girl who's been killed.
We started a manhunt.
Sarah's death was an incident.
Do you love Sarah?
No comment.
Did you care about her at all?
No comment.
Visible shock in the court. Some of the jurors' mouths literally dropped open. It was one of the most extraordinary days of evidence that the Old Bailey has seen in recent years.
Sorry, please, how can I help?
Hello?
Hello, how can I help?
I killed my daughter. I killed my daughter.
Surrey police had received a call overnight indicating that the young girl was in a home. She would be found dead.
My daughter is dead.
Who killed your daughter?
It's me.
Okay.
Father.
How?
I said she was looking up to the kitchen side.
I'm going to need you to slow down, okay? How have you killed your daughter?
I beat her up. It wasn't my intention to kill her, but I beat her up too much.
Where are you?
I'm left the property. I'm going to come back.
The call handler tries to establish where he is, but the man refuses to say. He wanted them to go round to his house in Woking.
Police! Got the door open. Police, hello, anyone in?
And officers managed to secure entry to the property.
Police, hello?
Very clean and tidy property, very sparse in terms of its decoration.
Police, hello?
And officers made their way as they were directed to one of the bedrooms where they found Sarah's body. And Sarah was lying on the bed. She was very peaceful in how she looked. And officers found a note that was just next to Sarah's body.
Love you, Sarah. Whoever see this note, it's me, Urfan Sharif, who killed my daughter by beating. I'm running away because I'm scared, but I promise that I will hand over myself and take punishment.
When I think of Sarah, my immediate image of her is her smile. She had the cutest, biggest smile with her little cheeks. And That is the first thing that pops into my head. Sarah was a very caring, very confident little girl. What we remember is she was an absolute chatterbox, and she wanted to just talk to absolutely everybody and anyone. She loved singing and dancing. One of the memories that will always stay with me is when she came. On Christmas, she wrote a song, and her little friend had written lyrics, and so she came to my office. Mrs. Chambers, we've written a song, we want to share it with you. And I remember saying to her, Sarah, what do you want to do when you grow up? And she said to me, I want to sing. She said, I'm going to be on X Factor. She said, I want to be on X Factor. She said, and I want to win it.
Sarah was born at Wexham Park Hospital in Slough into this very, very difficult family environment. And in fact, within about the first year of her life, she's been in temporary foster care twice.
Irfan Sharif, the father, he'd come over from Pakistan. He worked as a taxi driver in Woking.
Sarah's father had a history of violence. He'd been violent to previous partners, so it's a very difficult start to life. But ultimately, she ends up living with her mother, Olga Sharif, a Polish woman that Irfan Sharif had met in Poland and had married. She seems to have been quite a vulnerable character. Some allegations are made, apparently, by Sarah about violence from her mother. We'll never quite know whether they were encouraged by Sarah's father, but certainly the net result was Sarah Sharif being placed in the Irfan Sharif household. And by that time, he had a new partner, Binish Batul, who basically became Sarah's stepmother.
Binish Batul was Sarah's stepmother. She was a stay-at-home mum. She was very busy. She was looking after 6 children, so had a very busy life. Sarah's uncle, Faisal Malik, moved over from Pakistan to the UK and moved into this small flat. And by that time, you had 3 adults and 6 children crammed into this really small space.
What neighbours heard was a household where there was a lot of disturbance. There was banging, sounds of crashing, could be smacking. They hear a lot of swearing at the children.
The messaging that we had between Baynash and her sisters was very important because that gave us a real oversight, I would say, of what was going on in that house at that time.
Irfan is going crazy, beating Sarah up. I'm kind of having a panic attack. I have Russia and I'm literally dying. What the hell shall I do?
Why? What did she do?
He's literally going to break her arm or leg. I have no idea what to do. She's covered in bruises, literally beaten black.
And where's Irfan?
Sitting on his fat bum and playing Ludo.
The school is starting to see bruising on Sarah. By now she's wearing a hijab. It may be that she's starting to wear a hijab to hide the other signs of bruising. And the school are concerned enough about these bruises that they see that they contact Surrey County Council. They listen to the various accounts from the parents, from Sarah, as to how it is that she's received these bruises. And after 6 days, Surrey County Council say to the school that the school should take no further action and should monitor Sarah.
Soon after Sarah turned up to school with a mark on her cheek, her stepmother, Binish Batul, went to the school and she was really defensive and said it was caused by a pen. There was an entry on the child protection computer system which had noted that Binish Batul had used really foul language towards the children. Then the Easter holiday came And on the first day that Sarah was meant to return, the school, the head teacher, got an email from Sarah's father saying that he was going to pull Sarah out of school to homeschool her.
In April, the family move house. They move out of their very small two-bedroom flat into a bigger semi-detached house in Woking.
They're a large family, 6 children. A bit of a surprise because they're quite small houses, 3 bedrooms, but they looked so happy, and the younger children cartwheeled all the way down the back garden. It's a nice garden with a big lawn, and we just thought it was going to be quite a happy family if they decided to move in. That was my first impression.
So once they moved into this 3-bedroom house, they presented themselves as a happy family. They were friendly with the neighbours, but one thing that neighbours did notice was that Sarah was not being taken to school.
She always wore her hijab and she was well dressed, but she seemed separate, perhaps a bit withdrawn, pale.
The only thing that was a bit odd was the silence. Once the children had come in from playing outside in the garden, it became silent.
The move should have solved some of this family's problems. They had suddenly a lot more space, they had a lot more rooms for everybody to sleep in. But what's clearly happening behind closed doors is a real escalation of violence against Sarah Sharif. One neighbour at the back hears a scream one day, which is cut dramatically short, but that is the only real sign for the neighbours of the terrible things that are going on in that house.
There was evidence that Sarah was being beaten with a cricket bat. She was also being beaten with a white metal pole that was from a children's high chair. She was being burnt, and she was even being bitten. Despite what Sarah was going through, what was really striking was that she still managed to be this really joyous child. She was smiling, she was singing, she was dancing.
At the house, police found these beautiful, heartfelt notes that Sarah Sharif had written to both her father and her stepmother, saying how much she loved them, saying that this was the best family in the world. Even through all this torment and agony, it had become so normalised to her.
On the day that Sarah died, Binish Batul calls Irfan Sharif multiple times, telling him to come home. Something is wrong with Sarah. Irfan Sharif heads home. Before he does so, he's caught on CCTV outside the local co-op, and it's the last time that he's spotted on camera before Sarah dies. Irfan Sharif arrives back at the family house. By that point, Sarah has seriously deteriorated, and he thinks she's messing around, so he picks up a white metal pole, he whacks her a number of times, and then soon after, Sarah died.
That evening, first of all, they phone a travel agent.
Welcome to Southall Travel. How may I help?
Hi there. I'd like to know about ticket prices to Pakistan.
All right. So where in Pakistan you want to go, ma'am?
Islamabad.
Binish Batul sounds extraordinarily calm.
Your travel dates, please.
I'll leave as possible tomorrow.
And return?
Single.
It's really chilling to think that during that conversation, Sarah Sharif's lying dead upstairs.
Okay. And how many passengers will be traveling?
So, 4 adults and 4 kids.
They don't end up using that travel agent, they end up using a friend of Irfan Sharif.
So I told him I got 2 quotations. One is in the morning, one is afternoon 2 p.m. Morning one is around 7,000 and 2 p.m. is around 5,000. Then Irfan Sharif said, okay, Nadeem, book morning one. Then I said, are you stupid? There is just 1 hour difference. He decided, Irfan Sharif, okay, book 2 p.m. one.
The morning after Sarah has died, the entire family, without her, get into the BMW X5. They head down the road to the M25. They drive to Heathrow Airport. You can see them on CCTV arriving at the short stay car park. They leave the car unlocked, and then you see the whole family, Irfan Sharif, his wife, his brother, and all the children, apart from Sarah, then going through security at Heathrow Airport. It's a family on the run without the girl who's been killed.
The family fly from London Heathrow Airport to Bahrain and then to Islamabad in Pakistan. They arrive at around 5:30 local time. It was then when Irfan Sharif called the police in the UK.
Where are you right now?
I cannot give more details. I promise I'll come back.
I need to know where you are.
Police in Surrey, who have launched a murder investigation into the death of a 10-year-old girl, say that 3 people who they want to speak to left the country on Wednesday.
Police arrived here in the early hours of Thursday morning following what's described as a concern for safety. Now, it was once inside the property that they found the body of a 10-year-old girl.
I don't think I've ever felt such sadness. And I think I say that on behalf of all the staff and the community. I think the shock was just immense. Personally, talking as a head teacher, I don't think you're ever ready for something like that.
The injuries to her body were over 70 in number. She had broken bones, she had multiple bruises, a very serious injury to her brain. There were indications that she'd been bound, and she had burns across her body, including 1 burn on her buttock area.
That would have been caused by a domestic iron. I find it truly dreadful. Your natural reaction when somebody must come towards you with an iron would be to flinch and to move back. But the only way that injury could have been inflicted was by somebody else helping to restrain her.
Bruises and breaks are likely to have been caused through being hit with implements. As if it couldn't get any more horrific, the indication was that at times Sarah was hooded with a plastic bag and made to suffer injuries whilst having a bag placed over her head. We started what we would call a manhunt. It is believed Irfan travelled to Islamabad in Pakistan in company with his partner and his brother on Wednesday the 9th of August.
I'm Caroline Davis. I'm the BBC's Pakistan correspondent based here in Islamabad. Pakistan and the UK don't have an extradition treaty, and that poses problems unless they decide to come voluntarily.
It's a very complex structure in Pakistan and a very complex operating framework. We had no conversations with law enforcement agencies overseas.
We realised that the family had a connection to the city of Jhelum, so we decided that we were going to travel there to see if we could get more information. Jhelum is about a 2-hour drive away from Islamabad, population a bit over 1 million. So when we got to Jhelum, we went firstly to go and speak to this lawyer contact who gave us a telephone number that he said was to Irfan Sharif, but we were still not clear at this point whether or not this was Irfan's telephone, whether this was a friend, whether this was family member. We then got a response back saying, "Sorry, we are unable to give you any statement at the moment." Every day or so we'd get an update from the police saying that they were raiding another property or they were looking in a different area. So we knew there was a lot of pressure on the Pakistan police about this particular case. Then we started to hear reports from Irfan Sharif's family They said that the Pakistan police were picking up relatives in their family, taking them in for questioning, and according to the family, coming up with false charges against their relatives. They took the Punjab police to court to stop them from doing this. In court, we did hear from the police who said that they were interviewing some of these family members, but they denied the fact that they were bringing any of these false charges. We spoke to police sources who started to suggest that they thought that the family were being helped by someone in Pakistan to try to hide. That's what led us to Rasik. So it took us months of conversations, tip-offs and leads, but long after the manhunt was over, we found him. Rasik is a relative of Irfan's by marriage.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay.
Irfan Sharif room.
This is Irfan's room?
This Irfan room.
This is where he stayed?
इधर रुके हैं, इधर सोए हैं, इधर टेबल पे खाना खाते थे, बैठते थे, बिनेश से भी मीटिंग करते थे कि लायर से राब्ता करें, ठीक है, पुलिस से राब्ता करें उधर, अक्सर उनकी बिनेश की और उसकी मीटिंग जब.
So he took us into all of the different rooms, pointed out where the family had slept, pointing out where they ate, where the children had played. We then went up to the roof, and from there he showed us how he'd been able to spot the police coming.
इधर से भी पुलिस नजर आती है, ठीक है, चारों साइडों से. ये दो रोड है, ये इसी तरह जो इसके अंदर चले जाते थे.
You hid in here?
हाँ, उधर इसके अंदर.
You still hid them from the police, knowing that the police wanted to talk to them about Sarah's death. Did you ever not feel like you were doing the wrong thing by hiding these adults?
मैंने मदद की है इरफान की, और वो जो छोटे बच्चे थे ना, अगर मैं मदद ना करता वो जलील हो.
One of the other things that I found really surprising about speaking to Rasik was the fact that he said that the family weren't actually always in hiding. He took them to go and have haircuts, he took them to go and have pizza and ice cream. He was able to transport the whole family without anyone stopping them. We'd started to try to have contact with the grandfather, but so far he'd never wanted to say anything publicly. He decided that he did want to talk to us.
Did Irfan tell you what had happened to Sarah? After Sarah died, did he explain to you why he'd come to Pakistan?
बच्ची फौत हुई है तो जब आदमी को ज़हन पर चोट लगे तो ज़ाहिर है बंदे की सोचने की सलाहियत कम हो जाती है, वो खौफ के मारे आ गए.
We'd spoken to Mohammed Sharif earlier that day. We had put the material out on broadcast. We had then all gone to bed, and it was the middle of the night when we were then sent this video.
There are a couple of things I would like to address. Firstly, I would like to talk about Sarah. Sarah's death was an incident. Our family in Pakistan are severely affected by all that is going on. They are harassing my extended family.
We were really struck by the fact that Sarah is only mentioned once, calling her death an incident. She's then not mentioned throughout the course of the rest of the video.
The police is registering fake cases against all of these people to put pressure on them. My main concern is that the Pakistani police will torture or kill us. That is why we have gone into hiding.
Then we got a phone call and a tip-off. We'd been told that the police had come to the grandfather's house. Sarah Sharif's siblings had been found at his property and taken by the police. But what we learnt later as well from Rasik was that the 3 adults were with them as well. They ran and fled next door, and they were able to hide next door. When we looked back over our footage, we realised that at that exact point, we would have been metres away from where those adults were hiding while we were filming. We started to hear rumours that they might have left the country. Then we got a message showing that the adults were flying from Sialkot Airport to Gatwick.
I found out that they were booked onto a flight, and quite quickly our thoughts then turned to what arrangements we needed to put in place to make sure that they were met at the airport.
When the police go onto the plane to arrest them, they're sitting in the luxury of business class. When you consider what had happened to Sarah Sharif, that seems an extraordinary decision.
They were met on the plane. They were arrested from their seats.
Are you okay just to swap over? Just yourself go with me and you go with my colleague. This is the only luggage?
Yeah, that's the only luggage I'm taking.
Okay. So one cab is like between you and your partner, yeah? I don't have any bags. You have no bag?
They know exactly what's going to happen. They're handcuffed in front of all the other business class passengers.
I'll explain more outside, okay? I'll explain. Yeah, outside.
And then taken down off the plane.
Yeah, could you just confirm your name for me, please, sir? Yeah, Urfan Street.
They were very cooperative with officers.
You were therefore arrested for the murder of Sarah Sharif.
From the injuries sustained by her and the investigation conducted, you are suspected of her murder.
You are suspected of her murder.
They were taken into police vans and conveyed to the custody station.
Can I just ask you to introduce yourself, please?
So my name is Binish Patul.
And you are about to be interviewed for the offence of murder.
During the course of the next few days, they were interviewed by specialist detective officers.
What happened to Sarah?
No comment.
What did you see?
No comment.
Whose choice was it? How you left Sarah?
No comment.
In those interviews, they gave no comment to any of the questions that were put to them.
It says here, I did legally punish my daughter.
Yeah,
and she died. Okay.
No.
Explain to me what that means.
No comment.
Who is responsible for her death?
और उसका ज़िम्मेदार कौन था उसकी मौत का?
No comments.
Okay. Tell me about your involvement in Sarah's death.
फिर मुझे बताएं कि सारा के कत्ल में आपकी क्या शमूलियत है?
No comment.
Okay.
The defendants said nothing in interview and they were charged on that basis.
Do you love Sarah?
No comment.
Did you care about her at all?
No comment.
They've come home, but they're not actually telling anyone what happened. It was one of the most dramatic trials that the Old Bailey has seen in recent years. Sarah's father and stepmother were blaming each other for her death.
He was denying responsibility, saying he was not guilty of murder, and then seeking to blame other people, and then Baynash seeking to lay blame on other people. So it was a cutthroat between them.
Despite the fact that Binish Patul and Irfan Sharif said that they wanted to come back to the UK to fight their case in court, the prosecution said it was only because of the huge pressure that was being put on the family in Pakistan. His original version of events was that he was most of the time out of the house. He's a taxi driver, and he said that he didn't see anything that was going on in the house. He firmly placed the blame on what happened to Sarah on his wife, Binish Patul.
Then one morning, there were only a few of us reporters in court that day. He said, I've got something to say. What I said in my note and in my phone call, I admit it. And there was this visible shock in the court. Some of the jurors' mouths literally dropped open. They were open-mouthed.
He was crying. Binish Patul was sobbing in the dock. He started confessing to beating his daughter multiple times, repeatedly and with force over a number of weeks.
Hitting her with a cricket bat while she was tied up with packaging tape, and even beating her with a metal pole when she was dying, thinking that she was faking. It was one of the most extraordinary days of evidence that the Old Bailey had seen in recent years. This legal team stood up and said, we need to talk to our client. And then After lunch, Irfan Sharif went on giving evidence, but this time he was saying, I didn't mean to kill her. I didn't mean to cause her serious harm. And the legal definition of murder is if you kill someone either with the intention to kill or the intention to cause serious harm.
Binish Batul didn't give evidence during the trial. That is her right. She doesn't have to. But Irfan Sharif continued to deny causing the iron burn to Sara. There were the bite marks. Binish Batul was the only one who refused to provide dental impressions for comparison. Then there was that phone call that Binish Batul made to the travel agent. She sounded calm, calculated, despite Sara lying dead upstairs. Faisal Malik, Sara's uncle, he was always in the background. He didn't give evidence in court, he declined to. His defence was that he was always between university and working at McDonald's, so he was rarely in the house and that he had nothing to do with it. It was his card that was used to book the flights to Pakistan, and he also fled with the family.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, after a 10-week trial, a jury has found Irfan Sharif and Binish Batul, the father and stepmother of 10-year-old Sara Sharif, guilty of her murder.
Binish Batul was sobbing in the dock. Faisal Malik, Sara's uncle, he cried as he was convicted of causing or allowing the death of a child.
All three defendants have only ever sought to preserve their own interests throughout this investigation and have shown no remorse for their truly dreadful behaviour.
Sara's death was the culmination of years of neglect, frequent assaults, and what can only be described as the torture of this small child, mainly, but not entirely, at the hands of you, her father, Irfan Sharif. The degree of cruelty involved is almost inconceivable. This happened in plain sight, in front of the rest of the family, including, for the last 8 months of Sara's life, in front of you, Faisal Malik. The courts at the Old Bailey have been witness to many accounts of awful crimes, but few can have been more terrible than the account of the despicable treatment of this poor child that the jury in this case have had to endure. Irfan Sharif, for the murder of Sara Sharif, I sentence you to imprisonment for life. The minimum term will be 40 years. Binish Batul, for the murder of Sara Sharif, I sentence you to imprisonment for life. The minimum term will be 33 years, less the time that you have spent on remand. For the offence of causing or allowing the death of Sara Sharif, I sentence you to imprisonment for 16 years.
Sara was known to Surrey County Council. Of course, they were involved with the family previously, and the school contacted them about Sara's welfare as well, and they gave us this statement.
Until the independent safeguarding review concludes, a complete picture cannot be understood or commented upon. We are determined to play a full and active part in the forthcoming review alongside partner agencies to thoroughly understand the wider circumstances surrounding Sara's tragic death.
Throughout this investigation, our thoughts have been with Sara's mother, with her siblings, and with her friends, those that knew her during her short life.
Sara's mother has chosen not to be in court, and that's her way of dealing with it. She has been in contact all the way through the investigation.
I'm into my 30th year of policing. I've never seen a case that has included such horrific suffering of a young person. It's one of those cases that touches every single person who's involved in it.
She was called often a mother hen. She would love to look after all the little children on the playground. That's why they thought of the buddy bench. That's where children can sit if they need a buddy to play with. And then the singing award, because that really is what everyone remembers about Sara, is her constant singing, constant dancing. group of her close friends created a memory box for Sarah. One of the things they put in there was a white feather. The reason they put that in there is when we were doing our memorial service, it finished out on the playground. We had a balloon release and I'd written a final prayer. And as I finished that prayer, a white feather fell to the ground. And for me, that meant Sarah was looking down.
I'm Martine Croxall outside the Old Bailey in central London, where jurors have returned guilty verdicts on the charge of murder for Irfan Sharif and Banish Batul, the father and stepmother of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif. Our correspondent Helena Wilkinson sent this on the background to the case.
Sarah Sharif loved to sing and play the guitar. She was a confident, caring little girl. But in August last year, Sarah died after months of brutal violence.
Your daughter has died?
I killed my daughter. I killed my daughter.
More than a day after Sarah had died, her father made the call to the police.
My daughter is dead.
Who's killed your daughter?
It's me.
He had left Sarah's body alone at home in Woking in Surrey and fled with his family to Pakistan.
Police!
As Sarah's father was still on the phone to the police, officers were already inside the house.
Police, hello?
Upstairs, under covers in a bunk bed, they found Sarah's body. Her father had left a handwritten note. "Love you, Sarah. It's me, Irfan Sharif, who killed my daughter by beating." The little girl had over 70 injuries, including fractures, bruises, burns and bite marks.
She had injuries to her shoulders, which are said to be very rare by the pathologist. And she had lots of rib injuries, so you can imagine the fractured ribs, the pain that would have been causing.
Sarah's blood was discovered on this cricket bat, and her father used this metal pole to beat her with.
Your travel dates, please?
I'll leave as possible tomorrow.
With Sarah's body upstairs, desperate to leave, Irfan Sharif and his wife were making plans to flee.
And return?
Single.
Hours later, the family were at Heathrow, heading for Pakistan. But after a month on the run, Sarah's father, stepmother and uncle Faisal Malik returned to the UK and were immediately arrested.
The body of Sarah Sharif was discovered.
You are therefore arrested for murder of Sarah Sharif.
At the Old Bailey trial, for 6 days in the witness box, Sarah's father sobbed as he denied almost everything and blamed his wife. But on the 7th day, Irfan Sharif made an extraordinary confession. Jurors were left open-mouthed as Sarah's father began confessing. Trembling, he said he beat his daughter over a number of weeks repeatedly and with force. She died because of me, he said. Irfan Sharif denied burning and biting Sarah. Banish Batul refused to provide dental impressions for comparison.
I'm into my 30th year of policing. I've never seen a case that has included such horrific suffering of a young person.
It was a brutal end for Sarah, the spirited little girl who had dreams of becoming a ballet dancer. Helena Wilkinson, BBC News.
Well, as you heard there from Helena Wilkinson's report, the details that were shared in the course of the evidence being presented were extremely distressing. After the verdicts were handed down, Libby Clark from the Crown Prosecution Service spoke outside the Old Bailey. She said Sarah was a happy, outgoing and lively child, described as always laughing, who was cruelly abused and murdered by those closest to her. None of us can imagine how appalling and brutal Sarah's treatment was in the last few weeks of her short life. The injuries inflicted on her were absolutely horrendous. After Sarah died, instead of calling 999, the three defendants immediately made plans to flee the country, thinking only of themselves and not telling the police that Sarah was dead until they'd safely landed in Pakistan. We were able to build a strong case showing where each defendant was in the weeks running up to Sarah's death, using mobile phone evidence, CCTV sightings and work records. In a small house with such a big family, it would have been immediately obvious to all the adults what was happening to Sarah, yet none of them took any action to stop it or report it. They played their part in the violence that led to her tragic death. This was a complex case with much liaison with foreign authorities, and our CPS International Unit played a significant role in helping us to prosecute this case successfully. We have today secured justice for Sarah, a bubbly young girl who was killed by the adults who should have protected her. Also speaking outside the Old Bailey after the verdicts were returned, DCI Craig Emerson made a statement. He's the leading investigating officer from Surrey Police and Sussex Police Major Crime Team, and we can hear him now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Craig Emerson, Detective Chief Inspector for Surrey Police. I've been the Senior Investigating Officer for this investigation. Today, after a 10-week trial, a jury has found Irfan Sharif and Binash Batul, the father and stepmother of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif, guilty of her murder. Faisal Malik, Sarah's uncle, was found guilty of causing or allowing her death. Sarah was a bright and lively little girl who loved singing and dancing, and on behalf of Surrey Police, I would like to extend my deepest condolences to her mother Olga, her siblings and all those who knew and cared for her. Sarah's spirit and bravery and resilience in the face of the suffering that she endured has shone through from the vast inquiries that have been undertaken in this case. Sarah's young life was brought to an end as a result of the brutal abuse and unspeakable violence inflicted on her by Sharif, Batul, which Malik did nothing to prevent. This case has shocked and horrified not only those who knew and loved her, but people across the country and around the world. On the 10th of August 2023, we received a phone call from Sarah's father in which he told the operator that his daughter had died as a result of his actions. From this day, Surrey Police has worked tirelessly to build a case to prove that Sharif, Batul and Malik all played their part in Sarah's death. During the trial, Sharif took the stand intending to blame Sarah's death entirely on his wife before changing his story to accept some responsibility while still denying murder. Batul and Malik refused to take the stand at all or provide any explanation what happened to Sarah in their police interviews. All three defendants have only ever sought to preserve their own interests throughout this investigation and have shown no remorse for their truly dreadful behaviour. Sarah's death has been one of the most difficult and distressing cases that Surrey Police has ever dealt with. I would like to thank those who came forward to provide information and those who gave evidence in such harrowing circumstances. I would like to thank the jury for their careful consideration of the evidence which has been presented throughout the trial. The murder of a child is absolutely shocking, but the horrific nature of the abuse Sarah suffered during her short life has made this case particularly disturbing. Today, justice for Sarah has been served, and our thoughts remain with Sarah's mother and her siblings at this extremely difficult time. Thank you very much.
At the heart of this trial was Sarah Sharif, a happy, outgoing and lively 10-year-old girl who was cruelly abused and murdered by the two people closest to her. We have all seen Sarah's smile shine out from the photos of her, but everyone involved with this case will always remember that utterly horrendous injuries and brutal treatment she received in the weeks leading up to her death. We cannot begin to imagine the suffering she went through in her own family home. Both defendants denied killing Sarah. However, the appalling truth is that they, along with Faisal Malik, were all living in a small house and were all complicit in what was happening to Sarah. The evidence given by some of the neighbours of the family highlighted their concerns about what was going on behind closed doors, yet none of the defendants did anything to stop or report the abuse that led to Sarah's tragic death. It has been a painstaking operation by Surrey Police and the Crown Prosecution Service to build this case and be able to prove to the jury that Irfan Sharif and Bainash Batul were both responsible for Sarah's murder. By showing they were there in the run-up to Sarah's death, we were able to prove that both of them played their parts in killing her. This case was complicated further by the fact that all three defendants fled the country to Pakistan, and our CPS International unit played a significant role in helping us to prosecute this case successfully. We have today secured justice for Sarah, although the ultimate tragedy is that she was killed by the very adults who should have loved and protected her. Our thoughts today are with Sarah's family and those who knew her. Thank you.
That was a statement from the Crown Prosecution Service. Well, Lisa Townsend, who is the Surrey Police and Crime Commissioner, has also issued a statement saying the murder of Sarah Sharif has been one of the most harrowing and tragic cases ever dealt with by Surrey Police, and I welcome the guilty verdicts returned by the jury today. Sarah was a bright and vibrant little girl, and the suffering that she must have gone through in the final months of her young life is simply heartbreaking and almost impossible to comprehend. In the one place where she should have felt safe, she was subjected to the most unimaginable and barbaric abuse at the hands of the very people who should have been protecting her. Upon her death, instead of summoning help or accepting any responsibility for what they had done, they fled the country. Since that day, they have consistently sought to avoid blame for the sheer evil they inflicted upon Sarah over a prolonged period of time. Sadly, one of the common hallmarks of violence perpetrated against women and girls is that it's carried out behind closed doors, often by those closest to them. It's clear in this case that calculated attempts were made to ensure the sustained abuse of Sarah happened out of plain sight. But there were undoubtedly questions that need answering on what could have been done to prevent her death. So I welcome the safeguarding review into the circumstances which led up to the tragic events of last summer. This was a challenging and complex international investigation, and I want to thank all those agencies involved, both in the UK and Pakistan, for their cooperation and assistance. I also want to thank all of the officers and staff who've worked so hard to bring Sarah's killers to justice. It goes on to say that I commend the painstaking work of our amazing forensic teams who were able to uncover the true scale of horrifying abuse that Sarah suffered. I can only admire the professionalism and diligence all those involved in this investigation displayed in securing the appalling but vital evidence which was put before the court and enabled the jury to return their guilty verdicts. And she finishes by saying, they have been driven throughout by a pursuit of justice for Sarah. That justice has been secured today, and I know this case will stay with them forever. So concerns clearly had been raised at various times, but during the course of the trial, the court heard from one of Sarah's teachers that she was essentially a happy child, often bubbly, could be sassy, very spirited, bold and fierce when she wanted to be heard, when she had something to say, that she loved to be on the stage and singing and performing. That was her happy place. But she had been removed on a couple of occasions by her family from school after the school raised concerns and social services came in and made inquiries, but no further action was taken after Sarah began wearing a hijab to cover the bruises on her face. Well, our correspondent Daniel Sanford now looks at how and when those concerns were raised.
Special messages for her.
In Sarah Sharif's old classroom, memories of a much-loved school friend collected after her death. Her head teacher recalling mostly music and joy.
Sarah was a very caring, very confident little girl who was just smiling all of the time and was such a cheerful little girl. And what we remember is she was an absolute chatterbox. She would write songs all of the time and she would sing to anyone who would listen. And I remember saying to her, Sarah, what do you want to do when you grow up? And she said to me, I want to sing. She said, I want to be on X Factor. She said, and I want to win it.
But behind the smiles, Sarah had a very troubling life. Serious domestic violence in her family meant social services were involved even before she was born, and she was twice in foster care in her first 3 years. After her parents separated, she lived with her Polish mother, Olga Sharif, until the age of 6. But allegations of violence against her mother meant she moved back in with her father and his new family in 2019. At each step on the way, Surrey County Council social services were involved. But her father's home was full of vicious arguments and punishment beatings. Her stepmother, Binish Batul, once messaged her sister, "Irfan beat the crap out of Sarah and my mind is all in bits. She's covered in bruises, literally beaten black." In March last year, Sarah Sharif's school noticed bruising on her face. Children's Services got involved again, but their 6-day investigation ended with them telling the school to take no further action, but continue monitoring. A month later, in April, her father took her out of school, so no monitoring was possible. By July, here at her new home, out of sight of neighbours, the beatings accelerated. In around 6 weeks, she suffered 25 broken bones and a serious brain injury. But nobody took her to hospital.
Sarah would help with the washing.
Judy Lozeren lived next door. She never heard any sounds of violence, but did notice Sarah was subdued.
She seemed separate, perhaps a bit withdrawn, pale. I never saw her smile or do anything that a child maybe should do. And that worried me, really, but not... It didn't make me feel suspicious.
One senior social worker says the lack of monitoring of home-educated children is a loophole.
Children who are vulnerable, their vulnerabilities can be exacerbated when they're electively home-educated because they're out of sight, they don't have the protective care of being in school and all that brings.
On the 8th of August, Sarah's young body could take no more, and she died without even being taken to hospital.
She was such a cheerful little soul, and I think that's what's really heartbreaking, because she was such a special little girl. It's hard to put into words, actually. I don't think I've ever felt such sadness.
At her school, a bench has been dedicated to Sarah in the playground. Surrey County Council's commissioned a review of its involvement in her life to see what lessons can be learned. Daniel Sanford, BBC News, Woking.
Sarah's young life was brought to an end as a result of cases that Surrey Police has ever dealt with. I would like to thank those who came forward to provide information and those who gave evidence in such harrowing circumstances. I would like to thank the jury for their careful consideration of the evidence which has been presented throughout the trial. The murder of a child is absolutely shocking, but the horrific nature of the abuse Sarah suffered during her short life has made this case particularly disturbing. Today, justice for Sarah has been served, and our thoughts remain with Sarah's mother and her siblings at this extremely difficult time. Thank you very much.
At the heart of this trial was Sarah Sharif, a happy, outgoing and lively 10-year-old girl who was cruelly abused and murdered by the two people closest to her. We have all seen Sarah's smile shine out from the photos of her, but everyone involved with this case will always remember that utterly horrendous injuries and brutal treatment she received in the weeks leading up to her death. We cannot begin to imagine the suffering she went through in her own family home. Both defendants denied killing Sarah. However, the appalling truth is that they, along with Faisal Malik, were all living in a small house and were all complicit in what was happening to Sarah. The evidence given by some of the neighbours of the family highlighted their concerns about what was going on behind closed doors, yet none of the defendants did anything to stop or report the abuse that led to Sarah's tragic death. It has been a painstaking operation by Surrey Police and the Crown Prosecution Service to build this case and be able to prove to the jury that Irfan Sharif and Bainash Batul were both responsible for Sarah's murder. By showing they were there in the run-up to Sarah's death, we were able to prove that both of them played their part in killing her. This case was complicated further by the fact that all three defendants fled the country to Pakistan, and our CPS International unit played a significant role in helping us to prosecute this case successfully. We have today secured justice for Sarah, although the ultimate tragedy is that she was killed by the very adults who should have loved and protected her. Our thoughts today are with Sarah's family and those who knew her. Thank you.
That was a statement from the Crown Prosecution Service. Well, Lisa Townsend, who is the Surrey Police and Crime Commissioner, has also issued a statement saying the murder of Sarah Sharif has been one of the most harrowing and tragic cases ever dealt with by Surrey Police, and I welcome the guilty verdicts returned by the jury today. Sarah was a bright and vibrant little girl, and the suffering that she must have gone through in the final months of her young life is simply heartbreaking and almost impossible to comprehend. In the one place where she should have felt safe, she was subjected to the most unimaginable and barbaric abuse at the hands of the very people who should have been protecting her. Upon her death, instead of summoning help or accepting any responsibility for what they had done, they fled the country. Since that day, they have consistently sought to avoid blame for the sheer evil they inflicted upon Sarah over a prolonged period of time. Sadly, one of the common hallmarks of violence perpetrated